Hey, Bill.
Hello, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
The hot and sticky DMZ.
Hot, sticky DMZ, and the campaign is heating up. And
what a segue.
What a segue. Things are getting hot here on the campaign trail. Why don't you start off, Bill? How are things looking on the left side of your dial?
Well, I think there's a lot of attention being paid to Mitt Romney's embrace of Donald Trump.
Right.
It's a bit of a I think folks on the left and right are sort of scratching their heads while he was doing it. And Chris Matthews on Hardball last night suggested the most cynical take that this is a deliberate wink and a nod to birthers. Romney wants their votes without having to sully himself with the conspiracy theory itself. So he puts forth this line. Well, there are people who have differences of opinions, but I need to get the votes to everybody. And so I'm just going to say what I'm going to say, just because you think what you think. You can endorse me. It doesn't change my view. I don't think. I presume the Romney people already believe they're going to get those votes anyway. They don't need Donald Trump to get people who hate Obama to vote for Romney. I think this is actually an affliction of the Romney campaign constantly chasing what Obama is doing and trying to emulate the campaign style and the tactics. I think if you go to the Romney website, I think you'll see a lot of examples where they're trying to copy the Obama campaign's approach to things, even down to the logo. I feel is a cheap Obama knockoff. And so in this case, I think they saw how successful the George Clooney fundraiser was. You hook up with a big celebrity, you raffle off the chance to be at the party, and you get the big donations for the event itself, and you get all these small dollar donations from people who want to get in a piece of the action. And I feel like the Romney campaign said, that's how you get the small donors now. What can we do? We're doing terrible with small donors. We're only good with big donors. What can we do to close the gap? What celebrities do we have to work with? Victoria Jackson, no. Kelsey Grammer, no. What are you left with? Maybe they try to pick up John Lovitz now, but maybe he's not Republican enough.
Let me say this. Speaking of that, I just want to make this point. If you told me in 1986 that three of the cast members are going to be Republicans or are going to be
at least
supporting Dennis Miller of all people.
It's very sad.
John Lovitz. And then the other thing, though, is one of them would be a U.S. Senator. Like, the SNL cast from 1986 is much more politically active than I might have guessed back then.
If only Victoria Jackson relocates to Minnesota and runs against Al Franken, then I would pay to see that.
What I'd like to know is what's up with Jan Hooks and G.E. Smith and the world's most dangerous band. I mean, they have to be next, right? So I feel like this is just the Romney campaign chasing Obama's tail and not thinking through the consequences of what that means. It felt very slapdash. I don't think they had really great messaging around it, and they certainly didn't bother to tell Donald, hey, can you just keep it together for 2 days? Can you not go off another birther rant before this thing? I mean, that's sort of the basic campaign stroking that gets done normally. Well, I don't know that you can tell Donald Trump what not to talk about. And maybe that.
You kept them together for the endorsement announcement for 7 minutes.
Well, look, here's my thing, Bill. If they thought this was a smart PR move, then I would be gravely concerned about them. But if this is a fundraising thing, they need to raise money. They think that Donald Trump can help them raise money, and they're going to do it far enough away from the election and get it out of the way. Then I'm okay with it. But clearly, Donald Trump is not George Clooney. And clearly it is not the kind of message that I think is a winning message. I don't think it's a winning message for Romney. I don't think it's helpful from a PR standpoint. But if it helps him raise money, I don't think anybody's going to be talking about this, 5 months from now, as long as it doesn't repeat itself. And that's what we need to keep an eye on.
That also sets us up to be compared to the Clooney fundraiser. I don't know if they're going to release numbers at the end of this or not. It just didn't, it didn't go on very long. I mean, the Obama campaign kind of milked the Clooney contest for a number of weeks, and really, and they went back to people who already gave and say, hey, you can give again. You get 2 entries if you give again, and really, ran up the numbers on what they raised from the event. And I can't imagine just logistically how they're going to come up with $15 million off of this. And so if you end up with a smaller number, how is that going to look?
Yeah. I don't know. I tend to think this is somebody on Twitter yesterday made the point that it's like, after a long 3-day weekend and a slow news day, that this probably got more attention than it deserved. There are larger questions in terms of, like, does this imply that the Romney campaign doesn't get it? Do they think that he's good for them? Does this show you how, like, starved for celebrities the Republicans are? So, I mean, but by and large, I think it's probably not a terribly big story. It does, to me, I think maybe it steps on something I've been writing about, which is I think that Obama has had a pretty bad week. I definitely think Romney won last week, and I think that, Obama thought that the Bain stuff was going to be a big, big deal, and it totally got stepped on by Cory Booker, and that led to Ed Rendell and Harold Ford and other prominent Democrats kind of poo-pooing the idea. And so, despite the fact that Obama remained on offense, I felt like the week went to Romney. And as we head into summer, I bring forth a football metaphor. Going into the playoffs, everybody wants this bye week. They want to have the week off, right, to rest and to plan and to get healthy. But a lot of times, the teams that have to fight their way into the playoffs get hot late. They barely make it. They don't get that week off, but they come in a much more well-oiled machine. And I do wonder if maybe Obama's campaign, with all that time off, not having faced a primary, of course, if they may be a little bit rusty, and if Romney, and I'm one of the people who all along thought and argued that competition tends to make us stronger, and that Romney may have benefited from the primary, including the attacks on Bain from Rick Perry and Newt Gingrich and others, may have inoculated him a bit. What do you think, though, Bill? Am I wrong? Is Obama a little flat-footed, or
well, I mean, what you suggest is something that Politico has suggested too, and they went beyond Bain. They said the fact that that there was a Bain blowback from Booker and Rendell, that the gay marriage announcement was poorly managed. It came across more political than principled. That there's careened from message to message, from Buffett rule to student loans to gay marriage to Bain, and the Romney campaign has stuck to the economy, and it didn't get dragged down into the gay marriage fuss. And I personally don't buy it. Obviously, that notion is out there. As you alluded to, I think the Obama campaign is the campaign that's on offense. The Romney campaign's on defense. Even if every play doesn't totally hit the mark, they're the ones that still dominate the news cycle. Romney can't figure out how to make the news on his terms, right, and seize control of the debate. And that's why I think the Obama campaign, they're still winning. They're still up in almost every poll.
I mean, this is true that, going back to the football metaphor, the team on offense the most usually wins. If the Giants play the Redskins and the Giants are on offense for 40 minutes out of 60, you assume the Giants win, but they don't. It doesn't always happen. And so it seems to me that right now, yes, Obama's been on offense most, but he's not making it into the end zone. Sometimes he's kicking field goals. Sometimes he's punting. So although he has been on offense, and let's be honest, he has institutionally, he has the bully pulpit. It's easier for him to play offense. I think he's failed to capitalize. Now, the question is, can Romney ever go on offense? And the problem is, looking back at the way he won the primaries, by and large, it was playing defense, counterpunching, and then waiting till right before the primary election and going in with a lot of money and then playing offense by paid media. It wasn't via public relations. It was via paid media, attacking people, attacking Newt Gingrich, as he did, in Iowa and again after a game report, including South Carolina. So it's not really applicable to what's happening right now because there isn't a primary against Obama next week. There's what do you do for the next 5 months until the big general election?
Right. I mean, look, obviously you can play a lot of offense and drop the ball. You can have turnovers and whatnot, and the other team, if their offense is terrible, but you score on 3 turnovers, you'll win. Sure.
Right.
But go back to the Bain thing. I don't see this as an example of flat-footed campaigning. This was a very well thought out, well executed, polished presentation. I thought they were very scrupulous about the facts. There are certain Bain things. I think you compare what Obama said on Bain with what Newt said on Bain. I thought the Newt Bain film was way sloppier than what Obama's put out.
What the problem is that some of the members of their team were caught off sides, Bill. And
well, yeah, I want to get to that. I mean, that's a fair point. I think it's an example of not the Obama campaign being rusty. I mean, they knew what they were doing. They had a game plan. They've had a and the political argument sort of careened from issue to issue. I mean, there's a theme to all these issues. It's all about saying they're the fighters for the middle class, and Romney's the fighter for.
I agree with you there.
Well.
I don't buy the argument that they're lacking a message. My point is that it's not resonating. But I think you're right. I think that all of these things are meant to buttress a larger argument. So I disagree, I guess, with Politico in that case. I think you're right.
But they said that Bain was a problem. I mean, no one on the actual Obama team, the people actually on the field, were the ones that screwed up here. It's the people who were off the field who are throwing rocks at the guys actually playing. That are the problem here, and it does speak to the fact that the Democratic Party, more broadly, is a more unwieldy beast, and there's always going to be a bunch of whiners and carpers and second guessers that are going to get in your way. But I don't think the Obama campaign was, were blindsided by that. They certainly weren't ruffled by it. They didn't flinch from it. They didn't get mealy-mouthed at what they were doing. They were very clear why they thought it was an important issue, and they weren't going to back off on it. Now, whether it's resonating or not, I don't think you can quite say that yet. I noticed, Campbell Brown had this op-ed a couple weeks ago that Obama was condescending towards women.
Right. What was up with that? That struck me as an attempt to get attention for herself. Because it seemed
I'm sure it was.
But I mean, like everything we do is to get attention, of course. But I mean, a very transparent and blatant attempt, because it seemed inconsistent with everything else I've known of her in the past. Maybe it's just me.
When she first wrote it, she was like, women feel condescended. And I'm like, oh, really? Every poll I see has Obama killing Romney with women, so where does that come from? Then a poll came out, I think it was the Washington Post poll, that showed Obama's margin win was declining. And then people started to crow and say, aha, all this war on women stuff isn't working. Then there were 2 polls after that showed that the gap was still quite wide, hadn't really shrunk at all. So my point here is, to get back to the Bain stuff, is I think the Obama campaign is very data-driven. I don't think they're sloppy. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I think they're a campaign and an administration. When they see something's not working, they adjust. They've never just taken the same failed thing and just run into the ground.
Right. We'll see. I mean, so they're going into a game, and this will hopefully put the exclamation mark on the football metaphor. But they went into the game. They think that they can pound the ball up the middle, that they can run the ball. And the first couple of drives, they've tried that, and they've run into this offensive line, or this defensive line. And now the question is, do you do something different, or do you keep pounding that same message, hoping that eventually it's going to break through, that you're going to tire out the other side or weaken the other side? Because will that Bain message, that's what they think is their game plan, right, or the message, and do they recalibrate that, or do they keep trying to drive that message?
I think they're going to look at the data over the next couple of weeks. Has their message gotten through that that Romney's private sector record is not one of a job creator but a job destroyer, or are people going to react the opposite way and say, I think Romney is an example of a successful businessman, and clearly Obama hates free enterprise. If the latter data comes in that way, I'm sure the Obama campaign is going to talk about something else because they have other things to talk about. It's not like they're stuck with things. They got other attacks on Romney. They got other positives to say about themselves. So they have choices they can make, and they think they get it wrong in one aspect. I'm sure they'll pivot to something else. But I certainly don't see evidence yet that they feel like they've made this mistake. It's probably too early to assess it. But if you're right, I'm not saying you're wrong. If you're right, I think you'll see it in where Obama goes next in the campaign.
Well, speaking of pivoting to something else, I want to pivot to giving myself some props here, Bill, because I have been here on the DMZ making this point for months that that Barack Obama ran on this hope and change positive message, and that rather than being this transformational new politician, new kind of leader, he's going to run a very traditional negative campaign. And John Heilman, I think the New Yorker, has a big piece, of course, that essentially makes the exact same argument. It's gotten a lot of buzz this week. And I'm not saying I invented the idea. I'm just saying I popularized it. And I'm saying that you may not have heard it here first, but you heard it here before you heard it from him. Now, he does
this is a long-standing problem for reform Democrats, progressive liberal Democrats, who hold up high standards of how politics should be, and whether it's about campaign tactics or policy proposals or what have you, they tend to they're very vulnerable to charges of hypocrisy and double standards because they're setting up a high bar for themselves. And the media, I think, is sort of eager to find whatever small example they can find to make that case that they're not clearly as pure as they claim they're going to be. I find that the Heilman story, and I think others that like that have happened, they do this odd thing where they briefly acknowledge that yes, Obama ran negative ads against McCain too, and against Hillary Clinton. Obama's never run a campaign that was all pure sweetness and honey. What's interesting about Obama is that I think he melds high ideals with political reality in a way that doesn't undermine where his overarching goals are. And this is the holy grail that Democrats usually pine for. Why can't we have our Karl Rove? Why do we have to nominate all these weenies that get chewed up by Republicans? Why can't we nominate somebody tough and without not being Democrats anymore? And so here you got someone who's actually trying to walk that line. I think has walked it pretty well over the course. I mean, again, I don't think what's happening now is all that different than before. The Heilman argument is, sure, he ran negative ads against McCain, but these are way worse. And I just don't get where that comes from. I mean, it's the same kind of campaign, which is Obama's good because of ABC and Romney's bad because of XYZ. And that's not an inherently evil campaign to run. Now, if he's saying things that are factually wrong, if he's making cheap shot character assassinations, he's talking about issues that are totally irrelevant to how the post that Bresley's conducted, then I could say the guy's gone to the gutter. But talking about his business experience, which Romney is holding forth as why he should be president, that's not going to the gutter. That's basic politicking.
Well, yeah, I mean, I will say that Obama. We were just talking about the football metaphor. Obama's team has been very good at winning elections, casting him as a change agent. Now they're going to a different kind of game, which is a record to run on, so maybe it could be different. But look, I think the interesting thing is that this dovetails another story. So we've got the argument here that Heilman is essentially presenting, which is that Obama ran the first time this hope and change sort of transformative, optimistic figure, and now he's running a negative, more hardball campaign. A similar argument, I think, is being made in terms of his actual governing policy. And this has to do, why don't you set it up, Bill, the story about this kill list, which has been also getting a lot of buzz this week.
This is my big idea. This is this week's DMZ big idea. The article in the Times, it leads with Obama's kill list, that he has a process where when they're picking out targets for Al Qaeda to actually kill, that Obama is not just directly involved, but makes the final call. Yes, this person is on the list. This person is off the list. I'm taking personal responsibility for this decision. But that's an entry point to a larger article about how he's conducted counterterrorism in general, how he's tried to balance principles from the campaign to the realities on the ground dealing with counterterrorism. And there's a spin on the article. I think the reporting of the article is fantastic. It's fantastic. Everyone should read it. I think the spin on the article is towards Obama betraying his principles on these matters, and I thought that was unfair and not backed up completely in the story. Because the story itself, it does make nods to the fact that he spoke very clearly about meaning business on counterterrorism during the presidential campaign, going after Al-Qaeda, going after bin Laden, staying in Afghanistan, seeing that through. Going back to the famous anti-war speech he gave of the Iraq, saying, "I'm not against all wars, just dumb wars." You know, this is all part of a framework that he's established for a very long time, and the fact that he's taking personal responsibility for it and not just delegating it off to somebody else, saying you're going to go kill some folks and I'm going to have plausible deniability in case you screw it up. That's an honorable thing to do, not a betrayal. I mean, Democrats or liberals, when they're complaining about how Republicans conduct war, it's usually about the kind of wanton nature of it. Why are you doing carpet bombing when you could be doing something that's more surgical? And here they are trying to do something more surgical, you know, with drone attacks, with targeted kills against high-value targets, and they're still getting that kind of blowback. But the big idea part of this is that what Obama is doing is not at all unusual for Democratic presidents. Democratic presidents, generally speaking, have tried to meld humanitarian, democratic small d foreign policy goals with strategic use of military force. Woodrow Wilson, FDR, Truman, JFK, LBJ, Clinton. I mean, the only exception here is Carter, who was the only president, period, not to use military force. And I'm not dismissing Carter's foreign policy, because I actually thought it was quite strong. But I think he's the exception to the Democratic rule. The sweep of Democratic foreign policy is what Obama is doing, just adapted to the modern challenges of stateless terrorism, which Clinton identified first. So there's sort of a Clinton-Obama continuum here, although I think Obama's taking it to a new level because he's had the ability to post 9/11. But to say that what he's doing is sort of aping Bush and just copying Bush counterterrorism tactics, I think is totally wrong. I mean, there's a clear difference in Obama's overall foreign policy, in the combination of the humanitarian foreign policy goals with the military force, and that speaks to the diplomacy with Iran, his approach to Egypt and Libya. I think the choices that he's made there, and that's what you're going into Pakistan, which Bush didn't really want to do. All those things are shifts. The ending of torture, again, is not an insignificant one, even though, and this is one of the weird things about the New York Times article. It says that he sort of bent on rendition because the CIA complained initially that the way Obama had written the executive order was going to prevent them from rendering for logistical reasons, not for torture reasons, but for logistical reasons. CIA wasn't trying to say to Obama, give us the ability to torture more. And so Obama tweaks the policy so they can still render someone to a site in a different country while they wait for a plane flight. That's not a betrayal of principle. That's basic intra-bureaucracy compromising. I think that Obama has ended the policy of systematic torture, while not giving up the ability to have military force at all, is different. It's a different strategy than Bush, and in the line of Democratic foreign policy going back a century. That's my big idea.
That is a big idea. I'll make a few points very quick. I think, number one, it very well could be that a lot of people in the media and in the base of the Democratic Party just didn't believe what Obama was saying, that they felt that he was talking tough in order to get elected, but that he would essentially be an anti-war peacenik, and he has certainly proved them wrong. I do think that there are some serious questions that civil libertarians are concerned about with Barack Obama, including killing American citizens, I entered into a civil debate with Mark Thiessen. I think that's how I pronounce his name, the Washington Post columnist, and I think former Bush speechwriter and author, over whether or not American citizens should be allowed to be detained here in America and tried by military tribunals as opposed to facing civil trial. So, I mean, these are things that civil libertarians are concerned about. I would also say President Obama talked a lot about creating terrorists and how President Bush's activities may be creating terrorists. I think there's a huge debate to be had over these drone attacks. On one hand, I think that you could make a very good argument in favor of them. On the other hand, I think that is something that really needs to be discussed. And I think that President Obama has conducted a lot of this stuff. This isn't the kind of thing like a conventional war where we declare war on somebody, or, okay, we don't declare war on somebody, but everybody sort of knows what's happening. By virtue of the way that Obama has conducted this, it's very much clandestine operations. These drone attacks kill innocent people, kill civilians. Maybe we judge as a society that the trade-off is worth it, but I do think it's a big discussion that is largely being swept under the rug. Now, addressing your big point, I think that you make a very good point about Democratic presidents. The one thing I would point out, however, is that the Democratic Party, I think, shifted. So when you talk about JFK, FDR, Truman, the Democratic Party at that point was, I think, much more hawkish. I think that the Democratic Party dramatically changed in the mid-1960s. And the examples that you cite of Democratic presidents post the 1960s, I think deserve an asterisk, Bill, because, first of all, there were a lot of candidates who lost. I mean, Jimmy Carter won as a response to Nixon mostly, and he doesn't really count according to your analogy in terms of strong national defense. But think of the candidates who lost. I mean, there's a reason why Republicans. I mean, Nixon had 2 terms. Reagan had 2 terms. Well, Nixon was elected to 2 terms. Gerald Ford finished it out, but you get my point. Reagan really had 3 terms. Bill Clinton got elected by going against the image that the Democratic Party had, by being a new Democrat. And I think Barack Obama actually did the same thing, as you mentioned in a previous segment, by telling people, look, I'm just against stupid wars. I'm not against. So I think that deserves a bit of an asterisk. But your point is well taken. I do think that for a long time the Democratic Party has been tainted by an image of being weak on foreign policy, being sort of doves, and I would also say on law and order. And I think that Barack Obama, although it's not what this election is going to be about, there is a chance that he will have helped redefine the parties, and that could have major consequences going forward.
Well, I think that's a big question. I mean, right now, Obama is ahead of Republicans on foreign policy and security, stronger there than economic poll numbers. But to what extent is that going to be specific to Obama, the person, or is there a larger tectonic shift happening where people start to see the Democratic Party as intrinsically better in national security, the way that Republicans have been seen as better, for a generation?
Democrats didn't get in this mess overnight, and they won't get out of it overnight. I mean, the perception did not start. There was not one person. It was a trend, and I think that Obama very well could have begun. Now let's see who the next Democrat is. Like if Hillary Clinton is the next Democratic president or nominee, then I think it's more likely that they can lock in, or Leon Panetta, that they can lock in this strong foreign policy image, as opposed to if there were some sort of a backlash, then I think you could maybe retreat back to the old image.
Now, it seems like the Romney campaign and Republicans in general don't really want to concede the issue to Obama. And they're not necessarily running to Obama's left on certain things. So maybe you see some examples of that with Afghanistan, I guess. But you still see an attempt to try to pin the old liberal caricature stereotype on Obama, that he's soft, he's apologizing for America. Now, Romney's going at Obama over handling Syria. Why isn't he being more aggressive on Syria? I'm just curious if you think this, because you've generally, I think, been clear-eyed in assessing Obama on these things. You haven't taken cheap shots on Obama when it comes to foreign policy. Do you think what Romney's doing makes sense? Does it make sense to try to get to Obama's right on foreign policy at this point, or does it make more sense to say, you know what, he's taking out enough bad guys here. You're just not going to win that argument. So just get off of that subject and focus on the economic stuff because that's where he's weaker.
I mean, look, I think barring some sort of a foreign policy crisis, this election is going to be about the economy. And I think if there is points to be scored and money to be spent, it should be done on the economy, mainly just for strategic purposes. Having said that, I think that it's certainly fair to simultaneously believe that Barack Obama has been very good at killing terrorists. And it's entirely possible that he's also done a lot of other things wrong in terms of foreign policy. You know, there are a lot of factors. It's not just about the war on terror, although that's dominated. It could be sending mixed signals to Russia, telling Putin, hey, just wait till I get through this election and it'll be more flexible. It could be the gaffe that he committed, which about with Poland, having to do with, help me out here, Bill, the gaffe he committed about the Polish, we called it Polish prison camps or something. These were camps in Poland operated by the Nazis. That's, sort of signifies a certain lack of diplomatic skill, certainly at the very least sensitivity. I think that, could he have reacted sooner to the Green Revolution? I think that's entirely possible. So I think that, he's been very good at one facet of foreign policy and national security. It doesn't mean that he's good on all of it. I do think it's going to be hard to run against him on that issue, just because I think it's probably off the table for a variety of reasons. I mean, killing bin Laden is a huge check mark that I think gives him a lot of cover and credibility on this issue. But I think that conservatives owe it to themselves and the country to talk about these issues when they think he's sort of betraying an air of weakness abroad, but it doesn't mean it's going to be effective in a re-election bid.
Well, Matt, I think I have to leave it on that note. Meetings to attend to, business to do. I hate to walk away from you prematurely, but I can't live in the DMZ, Matt. Sometimes I have to cross the boundary.
Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and let me just give a couple quick plugs for us.
Sure,
I just discovered that not only can people listen to Blogging Heads on iTunes, but there is a special, you could download just DMZ episodes. If you go to iTunes and search, I think it's BHTV, DMZ, something like that. I tweeted it out from our Twitter account, at DMZ Show. You should be following that there. So you can keep up to date with all this stuff. We send out, updates, and also hit us up there. Give us big idea suggestions there at DMZ Show on Twitter as well. So keep in touch.
All right. Until next week, Matt. We'll catch you then on the DMZ.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.